Okay, and welcome back to Business Owners Speak. Today, I'm thrilled to have with us James Wasas from Standard H2. James, how are you today?
Very well, thank you. How about you?
I am great. Thank you. I really appreciate you being on, and I'm excited to learn more about the business. But if you could take a second and tell us a little bit about you and the business.
Well, I'll be 78 years old tomorrow on July 20th, and it's been a very good, interesting life. I started out living in East Brunswick, New Jersey, and I've lived overseas in Japan for 18 months, in Thailand for 10 months, and 14 years down in South America. And here I am in Ohio. And I majored in chemistry and business administration at Rutgers University, so that I could be in the business end of the chemical industry. And my first official job was as a research chemist in Johnson & Johnson in New Brunswick, of all places.
And so how long has Standard H2 been around?
Standard H2 is 4 years old, but it's based upon work that I did when I was living in New Jersey, where I co-founded a company called Swapsol with Ray Stenger, a chemical engineer, back in 2007. And I left the company in 2012 to move to California and build a gold and silver refinery for the second largest privately owned silver coin mint in the United States. And now, after 2.5 years, I ended up with a fabulous job offer here in Ohio. And I came here in 2015 in June with my family. And I've been here since, and it looks like I'll be staying here for quite a while.
Okay, so is this business your second time being a business owner?
Well, no, and I'm not actually the owner of the business. I'm one of 58 stockholders. I own 39% of the shares, and 57 other people own shares besides me.
Okay.
But I was the first outside from the founders of this particular company. There were 3 individuals who formed it back 4 years ago. And then I was the first person invited to join the board of directors and become active because it was based on my research. Standard H2 is all about turning waste into product, eliminating the production of carbon dioxide by alternative means, which basically is hydrogen. Hydrogen, I've always said, is the fuel of the future because it produces no greenhouse gases, and it's the most powerful fuel on Earth. That's why it's used for powering the rockets that are putting things in outer space. Hydrogen and oxygen combined are incredibly powerful. In fact, a pound of hydrogen has more power in it than a pound of dynamite or anything else on Earth.
Huh. And so,
we
go ahead.
Sorry. And one of the patents we have pending converts waste plastic from Procter & Gamble that is manufactured in 131 different plants around the world. And it's a very tricky combination of polyethylene and cellulose. And we found a way to turn the polyethylene part of it, the 85% part, into hydrogen. And we're waiting for the patent to be granted so that we can bring this to a commercial market. We've also succeeded in splitting hydrogen sulfide apart into hydrogen and sulfur, and are working on perfecting the membrane that would be necessary to do this on a commercial scale. In the same time, we've also developed incredibly powerful purifiers to make hydrogen, to make natural gas, and to make pretty much any gas incredibly pure, and it's called the sulfur magnet. And it sucks up 40% of its own weight in sulfur, so it's far more powerful than any other known method for eliminating sulfur, because sulfur is not good to be in hydrogen or natural gas or pretty much any place. because it attacks the expensive palladium catalysts or other platinum group metals and renders them destroyed. They can't be used to generate electricity anymore. They have to be sent to recycle, and that's a very expensive process. So we can make the cleanest hydrogen on Earth, the cleanest natural gas on Earth. And we're working with several companies who are testing it in the field to see how it does. We've also discovered, because after living here for 4 years and paying rent, my wife and I decided to buy a house, and we bought a farmhouse with 10 acres without knowing that the well smells bad from hydrogen sulfide contamination, which is a common problem in this part of the United States and in many other areas like Tucson, Arizona, and pretty much the entire state of Florida, and lots of other places here in the United States and around the world. So my wife said, well, why don't we put the sulfur magnet into a water filter cartridge and see if that solves the problem, because we were paying $44 a piece for replacement activated carbon cartridges from stores like Home Depot and Lowe's, and they only lasted 3 or 4 weeks. So back a year and a half ago, we put sulfur magnet into one of the water filter cartridges that one of our stockholders, a plumber, gave me, and we're still using the same cartridge now for a year and a half. And I have the water tested every 3 or 4 weeks by a water testing service, and it still is pristine, odor-free, and not contaminating us with anything that would be detrimental. So it's working pretty well. We're in the process of getting NSF international certification so that we can manufacture and sell this worldwide. That'll be our first real moneymaker, I expect, and that should be done within maybe 4 to 6 months. We'll be able to sell it to the municipal and the industrial and the residential market, because there's an awful lot of people that suffer with bad water.
Yeah.
And it's an ever increasing problem. The most fundamental things in life are clean air and clean water. And the same sulfur magnet actually removes all sorts of nasty things from air, including nitrous oxides and sulfur-based pollutants like skunk spray. Some of this sulfur magnet has been used extensively in places like Arizona, where there's a lot of roadkill of skunks. And in a matter of a few seconds, this same material sprayed on top of the dead skunk and the area around it. Within seconds, there's no trace of an odor of the skunk or anything else. It works with a place in Illinois has been using it with a pig farm with the excrements and eliminated the odors very effectively. We have various tests in various places, and we know even on a cat litter box, it's absolutely amazing at eliminating the odor of the feces and urine of the cats. So
Wow.
got a lot of potential.
Sounds like it, and a lot of different products. So real quick on that one, anytime I talk to somebody like you that has developing a product waiting on patents, I ask the same question, which is, why wasn't it done before? How come you thought of it and nobody else did, or made it work and nobody else did?
Well, necessity is the mother of invention. Most people who have a sulfur problem don't have the background in research and development that I do, or the education in inorganic chemistry that I do. Most chemists that graduate from Rutgers and most other universities are organic chemists, because there's so many chemists in the petroleum business. It wouldn't work without chemists and chemical engineers. But I never liked petroleum chemistry, because I took a summer job one summer while I was attending Rutgers with a neighbor whose children I used to babysit. And after working there 3 months during the summer, I decided that I didn't really want to have anything to do with the foul odors of the organic chemical production plant. And they were making some really strange things like tear gas components for the military and lacrimers that cause your eyes to water if you're exposed to it. But lots of other things that were useful components of drugs. And but they all smelled bad, so I didn't want to have anything to do with that. And when I bought this house and had this stinky water, it wasn't stinky when I bought it because the filter was very effective.
Right.
But after we were living there 3 weeks and the water started smelling really bad, I called up the former owner and he said, "Oh, remember that bag of filters I left there? I showed you. It's over there right by the well pump and the water softener. You have to change that filter every 3 or 4 weeks to get rid of that stinky odor." And after going through his bag of filters and buying a few more, I said, "There's got to be a better way." And my wife, who is a coworker, who a young lady I met down in Ecuador, of all places, when I was working down there, she said, "Well, try the sulfur magnet. It works to clean all these other things. Maybe it'll work with water." And sure enough, it does.
Wow. All right. So, looking forward, that's amazing. Practical use, right?
Absolutely.
Looking forward for the business, you mentioned, turning waste into something usable. Like what will that product look like, and who will be your target audience for that?
Well, there are, I think, probably millions of tons of plastic bags from supermarkets polluting the land and the ocean and many waterways. All of that kind of plastic is not generally recycled or even considered recyclable because it's thin and it's not profitable to recycle. And of course, without profit,
Right.
industry doesn't react. So what this does is it's a very easy process to take those polyethylene bags and turn them into hydrogen by way of our technology, because we have this material, the sulfur magnet, in some cases acts like a magnet and it sucks up the sulfur. But in other cases, like when you pass dirty air through it, and the dirty air has nitrogen oxides from diesel combustion, for example, it catalytically decomposes the nitrous oxides into nitrogen and oxygen. We have found that the same material is catalytic to many reactions, and it's really multi-talented, and it's totally inorganic. It has no organic components whatsoever. It's made from gold mining waste. And that's basically how we came up with this, because I spent 14 years down in South America working with 7 different companies that mine gold, setting up technologies so that instead of using mercury to recover the gold, they would use cyanide. And since cyanide is a chemical that I'm very much familiar with and I've used for years, it's also because I worked in the jewelry industry for a number of years, and cyanide is commonly used for cleaning the gold jewelry under very careful, controlled conditions, of course. And so as a chemist and as a person familiar with cyanide, I was working in conjunction with the World Health Organization to convert the people from using a perpetual contaminant, which causes brain damage and environmental concerns, and get them to use cyanide instead. And one plant that I worked at that was only recovering a few ounces a day ended up producing hundreds of ounces a day by switching to cyanide. And you just have to know how to use it very carefully. And it's very safe to use.
Huh.
Just it's a matter of education. Like anything else, my foundation is a good, solid education. And I've used it for all these years. And I actually tried retiring in 1965. And after I literally bought a house just a few blocks from the Atlantic Ocean in New Jersey, in Point Pleasant Beach. And after taking my beach cart every day after my retirement down to the ocean and setting up the umbrella and enjoying the literature that I had piled up for years that I never had a chance to read. After a few weeks, it got incredibly boring and I went back to work. And I've been working ever since. Retirement sounds great, but it's not all it's cracked up to be. And most of the friends I had back in those days have died from lack of activity, because if you have nothing to give, nothing given is nothing gained.
Yeah.
You get what you give. It all comes back to you. I don't know if you want to call it karma or what, but it's a funny thing how it works. If you don't provide input, there's no output of value. And by keeping busy, you're doing something that's good for society. You're doing something that's hopefully good for the world. And that's why me and my crew have put so many hours into doing something that's going to change the world for a lot of people. I know the UN is very much interested in using our material in many countries, Africa and Afghanistan, because the water has been so badly ruined down in these places. Now Ukraine, their water sources are terribly polluted with the munitions and the debris, and sulfur magnet will basically eliminate that. We found even that the runoff water from cyanide plants, which is an environmental concern, the same material eliminates the toxicity of the runoff. So it's no longer potentially harmful to the environment. And of course, mining companies keep great control over the runoff because they don't want to have suits. Lawsuits are very bad,
Right.
and they don't want to be sued. So they're very much concerned about controlling the discharge from their plants.
Yeah.
So this is going to help a lot of people and a lot of countries worldwide.
That's amazing, James. And yeah, you've keep yourself useful, right? And that keeps you young. And especially if you're working on something that you're passionate about, that's going to help other people. That is very admirable. And luckily there's smart people like you that put their powers towards good, right? Because, there's a lot of the other. Well, James, I'm curious, you mentioned a timeline on patents and whatnot before you can really go to market. What's that timeline look like again?
Well, it depends on the patent and how much you pay the patent office. In the case of the sulfur magnet, we already have a patent issued for that, and we have another one that's in review and pending. We have the patent that I actually started for hydrogen sulfide decomposition into hydrogen sulfur out in New Jersey. That was started in 2009 and was finally granted in 2016. But since then, we've got two new patents that we've created here in Ohio, which basically supersede that patent. Does the same thing, but in a different way, which is more efficient. So I've got three patents basically with my name on it, all for the same general type of thing, turning hydrogen sulfide, which is the rotten egg odor from the water, or the rotten egg material that comes out of the oil wells and gas wells, and turns it into hydrogen and sulfur, which is pretty good because hydrogen is the cleanest and most powerful fuel on Earth. So that's that. But
like you said, the fuel of the future.
Yeah, it is the fuel of the future, and I'm pretty sure you'll see all of these battery-powered electric vehicles will be in museums in 50 years because it's just a transitional technology. There's not enough lithium on Earth to have enough batteries to power everybody that would like to have an efficient automobile.
Right.
And that's a big problem. You have to have something that is unlimited as a fuel. And of course, there's an awful lot of water in the ocean and pretty much every place else. So you can always split water and turn it into oxygen and hydrogen as your fuel source. That's not efficient. But if you get your hydrogen from hydrogen sulfide, you're using a lot less power to do so because it takes 6 times as much energy to split H2O as to split H2S. And that's why I chose H2S as my candidate, because it's a waste that is expensive for the petroleum industry to dispose of. They use an antiquated process called the Klaus reactor, which costs around $250 a ton for operational costs. The maintenance is very expensive. Besides, the capital cost is through the roof.
Yeah.
And this basically obsoletes that technology as soon as we have a scalable process. We can do it in the laboratory very easily, and I've got 12,000 plus feet of laboratory space here, which I could show you since it's on a camera instead of on the desktop. But
well, we may have to do a follow-up interview because it's super fascinating, and but I don't want to run over your time because I know you're a busy guy. But James, thank you, I guess, from a regular consumer and inhabitant of the planet, that you're putting all the smarts and the hard work and the money in good places. So certainly a pleasure to meet you, and we look forward to seeing what Standard H2 comes out with.
sounds great.
Okay, James.
Thank you.
Take care.